The final stages of World Cup qualifying are about to land around the world, and it's all very confusing. But I'm super into it, so I sat down, figured it all out. I'm going to tell you the different scenarios, how everything works, and who looks likely to qualify as we enter the final stages for every single continental qualification, except one. But yeah, I'll tell you about that later. Now we're going to do this alphabetically. I'm going to take a second to actually categorize it down below. So this will obviously be like this short little intro, and then you'll have each section of me breaking down the qualifying for a different area. But I'd recommend listening to all of it, obviously, because I wouldn't take the time to do it otherwise. And it's cool to understand how the qualification is going to work in a COVID shortened cycle. This is the last World Cup where only 32 teams make it. We're about to hit the 48 team World Cup is coming in 2026. This is the last time you're going to get qualification that looks kind of like this. You also get what random teams actually have a pretty darn good shot to make it through, and what teams that you normally expect to see at a World Cup that are kind of screwed, like the fact that you have to choose between either Cameroon or Ivory Coast already, and yet the DR Congo has like a straight line right to the World Cup. Final round of World Cup qualification is beginning for Asia, which obviously alphabetically is the first continent that we're going for. Asia's final round of World Cup qualification works like this. You have two groups of 6 teams, right? So we have Iran, South Korea, the UAE, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and then the other group is Japan, Australia, Saudi Arabia, China, Oman, and Vietnam. Those are the 12 teams that have a chance to make the World Cup out of Asia. If you finish in the top 2 in the group, you achieve automatic qualification. If you finish 3rd in your group, you go into a playoff where if you win that home and away, then you go to the intercontinental playoff to play a team from some other continent around the world to grab one of the last spots in the World Cup. And that'll be happening in June 2022, which is one of the beautiful things about World Cup qualifying here is that, look, all the matches, the entire group stage takes place in Asia from September 2nd to March 29th. That's the entire World Cup qual. Normally, this stuff takes over a year. This is going to happen in 6 months. 7 months. You might have noticed we're missing some teams that I would have expected to go through. One that is tragically not qualified is Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan finished 2nd in their previous round. There were 7 groups, right? Count them all the way down to F. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 groups. One of them had Qatar in it, and they ended up winning their group, so things got a little weird. But if you finished 2nd, you were likely to go through, but not guaranteed. Like China went through. They finished 2nd ahead of the Philippines and Mali, right? I mean, China's got like 8 billion people. You'd expect them to be able to hang. But Kuwait finished 2nd ahead of Jordan, but did not go through. Iraq finished 2nd and went through. Bahrain was so close to going through. They only allowed 4 goals in the entire that's so brutal. Bahrain gives up 4 goals the entire qualifying campaign and does not go through to the next round. I mean, there's some really brutal things here, Uzbekistan being one of them. They happened to drop a match to a non-Saudi Arabian team in their group. They went and lost 2-0 to Palestine, and that's all it takes to not be able to qualify for the World Cup. The other heartbreaking 2nd place team was Tajikistan, which congratulations to them for finishing in 2nd place. I don't know who put this group together, but there is nobody in it. Japan, a plus 44 in 8 matches. And then perhaps the most balanced group in the history of qualifying, where I thought Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, and the UAE all had a chance to qualify, and yet somehow Indonesia didn't show out at all. Thailand, who's actually won the Asian Cup in one of my FM live sports saves, didn't even get close. And Vietnam and the UAE are going through, so congratulations to them. How do the groups shake out? Now, if I had to pick a team that was going to pick up, I'd pick South Korea. They actually did draw Lebanon in the previous round and got them in their group again. That is something that is probably going to give Lebanon a lot of confidence. But Iran's not impenetrable either. They actually only finished a point ahead of Iraq in the previous round, and of course Iraq is in their group again. So do not count out any of the teams in this group being able to make some noise, but in terms of sustained points, Iran and South Korea just have the big players, and particularly Son Heung-min, who's just the Asian Footballer of the Year in perpetuity, that are going to be able to make the difference on these huge stages. But this is not a super easy group for them. I think the team that you see end up finishing 3rd is actually going to be Syria. If you see the last round, Syria actually won their group. They only lost 1 game. And just forget everything you think about the political situation in Syria. The team doesn't suck. They were a goal away, actually extra time away from making it to the Intercontinental Playoff last time. They finished 3rd in their group in World Cup qualifying for the 2018 World Cup. They played Australia. They went to extra time in Australia and lost. I watched because I have no life. And it was a great match. The point is, the Syrians are talented. They've been here before, and they should be able to do it again. If I had to pick a team to upset that, it's Iraq. I don't think the UAE or Lebanon just have the quality in their lineup to be able to get it done. Iraq, you would be surprised to know, actually has a fairly rich footballing history. Not only have they made the World Cup multiple times, they've won an Asian Cup before and are fantastic in domestic Asian competitions. They're very competitive in Asian Cups. Obviously, they almost knocked Iran off the top of their group in qualifying. So Iraq is going to be a contester. I think Syria goes. Who will they be playing? That's a fairly good question. We have Japan, who I'm just going to pick to top the group right away. Australia barnstormed their group in the previous round, won all 8 matches, and you have to consider the former Asian champions to be, well, they're in the World Cup almost every time. It's because they can get a consistently decent team on the field. And Saudi Arabia's been slipping. They might not have lost in the group stages, but Saudi Arabia hung a draw with Palestine and a draw with Yemen in the previous round. The Saudis also looked really bad at the last World Cup. And so I'm going to go Japan, and then an Australian team that's been really up and down, but has looked solid in this qualifying campaign. I think there will be a pretty significant gap between the Saudis and the rest of the field, though. I know China's making strides. Congratulations, they're going to finish 4th, right? It's going to be Saudi Arabia against Syria, which is going to be a nice, saucy match to get to the Intercontinental Playoff, don't you think? Oman and Vietnam, 2 teams that look, there's just not the quality, right? Oman does not have a lot of players on the field that are going to come from any league you recognize, and neither does Vietnam. Vietnam has a pretty solid domestic league when it comes to like Asian league standards. That's where they're getting most of their players from. I've watched the extended highlight matches from the Asian Cup though, and it's a lot of energy and running around, and I just don't think that's going to be enough when you're playing against Japan, Australia, and a Saudi Arabian team that's just got a better domestic league in every way. The Asian qualifying, pretty cut and dry, but it's worth noticing this is congested, right? This is 7 months. It's like a league season, basically. Who's ever in the best form at the time, whoever gets a nasty injury that turns the tide of things, it could get ugly quickly. There's only 10 matches, and you have to be in the top 2 to be comfortable at all. And as we saw particularly in Group A with Iraq taking points off Iran, Lebanon taking points off South Korea, everybody's still in play, except for maybe Oman. This brings us to the second qualifying, in my opinion, one of the more difficult qualification campaigns you can have. I think it's Europe and then South America and then Africa. And that's where we're going, to the CAF. For what is the second round of qualifying, that second round is essentially the first proper round. The previous round is the huge, this playoff thing where all the lowest ranked teams you've probably never heard of play each other. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, there were some great matches. Tanzania, Burundi went to penalties. I did watch the extended highlights. Ethiopia scored to win on away goals against Lesotho. Liberia with a 3-1 win in the first leg beat Sierra Leone in a West African battle. I don't know how, but Somalia beat Zimbabwe in the first leg, only for Zimbabwe to flip the tide, and I felt really bad for Somalia. In a particularly brutal draw, 2 teams with actual players in Angola and Gambia had to play, and Angola got through. And Sudan survived Chad. That's basically all you needed to know. It sets up a group system where you have to win your group to stay alive in the World Cup, which is hard. There are a lot of countries in Africa, and Africa gets 5 World Cup spots in the current format. It's brutal. There are many more than 5 good teams from Africa. After you win your group, then you have to go into a home and away playoff that's drawn again in order to play your way into the World Cup. So it's insanely difficult. Group A is Algeria, Burkina Faso, Djibouti, and Niger. There are 2 teams that could win this group. Algeria are the reigning African champions. They're really going to back themselves. But the Flying Traorés of Burkina Faso, somebody like Lassine Traoré, and I say that because Bertrand Traoré, Lassine Traoré, and Charles Kabore, I'm just kidding. This Burkina Faso team is good. They made the Africa Cup of Nations final less than 10 years ago. Not a lot of these players were on that team. In fact, basically none of these players were on that team. They're kind of young right now, but it's a nation that's capable of putting the infrastructure together to have a very competitive national team. While they have never made the World Cup before, they are the only team with a shot at Algeria in this group, and it is a shot, but you have to think Algeria is going to get through there easily. The next group, Group B, is what we call a godsend for Tunisia. They have to go up against Equatorial Guinea, Mauritania, and Zambia. The downside for Tunisia, who are the favorites in this group, is that none of those teams are pushovers. Mauritania in particular's got a player at Strasbourg, Abdoulaye Ousmane. They have multiple players on FIFA that you can check out, and one of their starting strikers is a Greek Super League regular, who at one point was featuring regularly for a team you've actually heard of, Auxerre. I definitely didn't say that right, but you know who I'm talking about. Then there's freaking Zambia, who won the AFCON in 2012 in a shootout against Ivory Coast, a nation that's capable of putting a competitive team on the field that has multiple Premier League players in Enoch Mwepu from Brighton. They also have Patson Daka, who is obviously just involved in a big transfer. But I back Tunisia to get themselves out of this group. Tunisia has the highest floor of any team in this group, and I think Zambia is going to be able to separate, but Equatorial Guinea and Mauritania are going to be able to compete. There is no pushover in this group. Although I could see Zambia or Tunisia hanging 3 or 4 on Equatorial Guinea, they will hang. This brings us to Group C, and you have to keep thinking about how hard this is to do, but it's going to be a little less hard, I think, for Nigeria. Central African Republic and Liberia are really not big competitors. Jeffrey Kondogbia cannot carry Central African Republic through a home and away set in these groups, while Liberia is a team that's almost happy to be here. They're not guaranteed to get to this stage. Cape Verde is like Portugal's C team. They have some good players, but they're not great players. I don't think Nani is switching his allegiance anytime soon, so Nigeria should be capable of cruising. If anybody gives them a problem, it would be a road trip to Cape Verde that goes sideways, and then all of a sudden Nigeria's in trouble. But barring anything crazy happening, this is Nigeria's group to win. It's been handed to them by the draw. You know what wasn't handed to anybody by the draw was a comfortable time for Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Mozambique, and Malawi. Because for some reason, Cameroon and Ivory Coast are in the same group. I know the reason. It's Ivory Coast does not have a great world ranking right now, and so they ended up in the second pot and ended up in this group. That is savage. Malawi is a team that can actually put a few decent players on the field, but they're going to have absolutely no chance now. This is like those World Cup groups where you end up with Spain, Portugal, and then Iran and Morocco, right? Like, it's sorted for you already. Cameroon and Ivory Coast, as long as they can avoid a catastrophic mistake, which they cannot have against the other two teams, will come down to essentially a home and away tie between two of Africa's biggest footballing nations. One of them is not going to the World Cup. Then that brings Group E, and you wonder what offsets that. Well, now we have a group where none of the 4 teams have ever made the World Cup. Obviously, winning this group isn't going to guarantee you a trip to your first ever World Cup, but it's got to be Mali. This is their chance. Kenya and Rwanda are pushes. They're not teams that have any sort of quality. Mali is miles more talented than anyone else in this group. It's not even close. They have 3 legit players at the front of their line. They've got El Bilal Toure, who is an absolute burner if Football Manager knows anything. Sekou Koita, who's been lighting it up for Salzburg and drawing Holland comparisons. I don't think he's going to, but that's what they say. And Khalifa Koulibaly, who plays for Nantes. They have multiple Premier League players. They've got Moussa Djenepo. They've got Yves Bissouma, who's honestly been amazing recently. They have Haidara, who is at Leipzig. They've got another guy at Salzburg named Kamara, who I've honestly never heard of, but he plays for them. Even their defense, we're looking at European players in top 10 leagues. It's crazy. You don't know it, but Mali's actually got a really good team. They should run this group. If they don't, there's a real problem in the Malian ranks, because every other team in this group would be begging for one major European player, and Mali has like 20. The next group is F: Angola, Egypt, Gabon, and Libya. The flying Aubameyangs have their work cut out, but honestly, it's possible. Mo Salah is going to be headhunting here, trying to get back to a World Cup that he can go to without being hurt. Also, it's a huge World Cup for the Arabic world. I imagine he'd be fired up about that. I honestly don't know about these sort of things, but when a World Cup's in your neck of the woods, you probably want to go. There's a lot of motivating factors. And then there's also Angola, who's capable. Libya's a wash. Obviously, the underlying tone to this video is that there are a lot of COVID stuff going on and some players aren't being released. Mo Salah can't play in Egypt right now. If they go on the road against countries not in like whatever the English red line zone, amber something is, that like he can play their road matches but can't go to Egypt. All of that stuff considered, it could open the door for either Gabon, who doesn't just have Aubameyang, they also have Mario Lemina, who I regard very highly, or an Angolan team, which features a surprisingly large number of European-based players in good leagues, as well as an experienced core of players that seem to exclusively play in top Middle Eastern leagues. It will be uncomfortable. There are 3 teams that could expect going into this group stage to have a shot to make it through, but Egypt should do it. As long as they get enough players released to go play for them, it still should be Egypt. In Group G, Ethiopia, Ghana, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. We'll just go ahead and cross off Ethiopia and Zimbabwe now. Zimbabwe lost a match to Somalia in World Cup qualifying. Whatever they used to be, they're not it anymore. Ethiopia got through on away goals from the previous round. They're also a wash. I don't care how down in the dumps you think Ghana is, they're still more talented at almost every position than South Africa. But those are the 2 teams that are essentially going to be playing a home and away tie if South Africa is able to get through Zimbabwe and Ethiopia without dropping points. Ghana should be able to with its eyes closed. Group H sees Congo, Namibia, Senegal, and Togo. Senegal is in the midst of an unbelievable golden generation. Namibia and Togo should be complete pushes. And every team outside of Senegal in this group is a hodgepodge of domestic players and small league players, including Togo, who's been to a World Cup before. This is just not a collection of teams that could reasonably threaten Senegal over 6 games. Group I is much more spicy. Guinea and Morocco both really should be in the next round, and now they're at each other's throats. Sudan doesn't have the quality to threaten either of those teams, but Guinea-Bissau could be a monkey wrench. And you're sitting there going, oh yeah, sure. I'm dead serious. Their connection through, well, colonialism to Portugal has created a pipeline to the top 2 divisions of Portugal and France as well. That means the vast majority of their team is European based. They're not playing in African or Middle Eastern leagues. They are playing in Europe in top 2 divisions in the 5th and 6th best leagues in the world. Now, Guinea, not Bissau, but Guinea's got more recognizable names. They've got Naby Keita's the talisman. Morocco's got talent coming out of its ears right now. Somebody like In-Nesyri up top is a problem. Hakim Ziyech is out on the wing as long as he's healthy. But I'm telling you, this might come down to which side, Guinea or Morocco, slips up playing on the road against Guinea-Bissau. Who tops it? I think it's Morocco. I just think there's a cut above. I think Guinea-Bissau might even finish ahead of Guinea, even though Guinea is going to believe every time it takes the field in this group, it should win. The final group, Group J, is a handover to DR Congo in a way that no other group is. Look, Tanzania just can't, right? They got through Burundi in a penalty shootout. It was fun to watch, but no. Benin, also no. Madagascar has more European players than you think. Marco Ilaima Haritra, and yeah, I did say that right. Marco Ilaima Haritra is actually a really solid, capable player. And they have a couple other guys, like Rayan Revelosan, who plays in the MLS, I know is good as well. But it just doesn't seem to gel on the field, and it's also not enough talent. Like, they lost to Ethiopia in AFCON qualifying in their second to last competitive match. They lost 4-0. So even if they have some players that you look at and you go, hey, they should be good, they'll finish second in the group. That's it. DR Congo is going to get through to the playoff. And then once you do all that, then you got to play a home and away against another team that won their group, and all heck breaks loose all over again. But enough of that nonsense. It's time to get to my neck of the woods. Concacaf. Things actually got switched up. This is one of 2 World Cup qualifying formats that was adjusted because of COVID. Not just the timeline, but the actual way that it's done. Concacaf used to end with a hexagonal. This year, it's ending with an octagonal, which means instead of 6 teams in the final group, there are 8, which of course means, yeah, we got to play 14 matches, which is going to happen from September, like right when this video is coming out, to March. The way this works is in the octagonal, if you finish in the top 3, you make the World Cup automatically. If you finish 4th, you go to the Intercontinental Playoff directly with an opportunity to play one of the other teams that's there. The 8 teams include teams that are here essentially every time, which would be the United States, Mexico, Costa Rica, and Honduras. The up-and-coming Reggae Boys of Jamaica are here. Panama off their miraculous World Cup qualification 4 years ago that may or may not have involved the United States slipping into a pit of despair while losing at Trinidad and Tobago, a team that it had not lost to, and I don't even know how many years up until that point, losing a match that they just needed to draw to make the World Cup. Yeah, I don't remember it at all. Then you have Canada and El Salvador, who are not regular nations at this level, but of course Canada, very well documented, has produced a couple of quite good players recently, and Alphonso Davies and French League winning Jonathan David. El Salvador, who you probably have never heard of, but they have the coolest national team badge of all time. It is literally this, ES, on their chest, which is awesome. Showed out at the Gold Cup. I watched every one of their matches. They played well. They got to the quarterfinals, played hard all the way to the end, and nearly got to the semifinals. They're not bad, and now they're on a big stage with this lovely golden generation they've put together. It's going to be tricky, but the United States has been on the come up, and I think after winning the Nations League and the Gold Cup this past year, I'm going to put the United States top of this group and Mexico second. Mexico still has all the stuff that, I mean, look, Mexico's what, a top 10 team in the world? So is the United States now, according to the FIFA rankings, which you can't put too much on. But Mexico's bar is always very high. Like, their floor is still very high for the level that they're going to get. They play in an incredible home atmosphere in the Azteca, which, if you don't know, is at a really high elevation, so it's hard to play there for more reasons than the fact you're just getting pelted with piss-filled beers. They are suspended, however. Their first 3 home matches of the 7 they'll play will be without fans, but that elevation still kick you around. The Canadians in the Gold Cup took Mexico to the limit, and they didn't have Alphonso Davies or Jonathan David to do it. That impressed the bejesus out of me, because that was most of the Mexican first team. You add in Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies and the real determination that they're going to have to finally get to a World Cup without having to host it, which of course they'll be at the World Cup in 2026 regardless. And I think Canada, honest to goodness, can come up third. The real tricky thing is picking who's going to finish fourth. Jamaica has acquired some serious players. Not only do they have Leon Bailey, but vaunted West Ham striker Michail Antonio has recently committed to the cause, and he is not the only one. It's actually something of an exodus, and it's brilliant on the part of Jamaica, who've been competing with domestically grown players for a long time. They're reaching out to the diaspora, which is something that's taken nations like Morocco to the next level. And whatever you want to say, there are certain countries, whether it be Morocco or Jamaica or a host of others, where the diaspora is many times larger than the actual population of the people born in the country. Jamaica is one of those. Andre Gray and Damari Gray are in the process of acquiring passports to play for the Jamaican national team. So is Max Aarons, that prolific fullback for Norwich, who honestly might be able to play for a higher national team if he wants. He's getting a passport too. Mason Holgate, who's a center back for Everton, is in the process of getting a passport to play for Jamaica. Nathan Redmond from Southampton, Kamar Roof at Rangers. All of these guys are getting into the fold for the Jamaican national team. How many of them will actually play? We don't know. But this is according to the JFF, Jamaican Football Federation. All of these guys are getting passports with the intent of being eligible for the Jamaican national team. You get more than half those guys, Jamaica's legit. You know why? Because they're already freaking legit. The team made back-to-back Gold Cup finals. They've lost both of them, but you know who didn't make back-to-back Gold Cup finals? The United States or Mexico in that time span, because they played one or the other in the final. I think Canada's scary and is the surprise. I also think Jamaica is a very tough play, and Jamaicans really know how to back their sports. The United States did end up beating Jamaica in a very difficult Gold Cup semifinal last month. I had a lot of Jamaicans in my Twitter trying to get their manager fired. So if you ever needed proof that everyone around the world is literally the same. I think Honduras finishes 5th. They were terrible in the Intercontinental Playoff the last time they made it, but Honduras is really going to be pushing for that spot. Costa Rica looked terrible in the Nations League. I'm going to go ahead and put them down in 6th. I'm going to put El Salvador 7th, and Panama has been awful recently. They made the World Cup by the skin of their teeth with an old gold generation like Blas Perez and stuff. All those guys are too old to be effective anymore. I think Panama flames out into the bottom of the octagonal. But Concacaf qualifying is going to be a load of fun because there are a ton of matches, and I'm really not sure what's going to happen behind the U.S. at 1. America! This brings us to South America, which is just a wonderful qualifying. South America is what I believe to be the second most difficult qualifying. You have to finish in the top 4 to get automatic qualification, and there are a lot of good teams in South America, and then you have to finish 5th if you want to at least get to the Intercontinental Playoff. South America is the best nation sending somebody to Intercontinental Playoff, though, so usually the South American team wins. Brazil has won its first 6 matches in qualifying, and you basically want to already slate as the top dog, and Argentina is coming off winning the Copa America and hasn't actually lost. They've just drawn 3 of their 6 matches, and so they look comfortably through as well. The surprise package is Ecuador. See, the qualifying's already started. It's a third of the way through, and Ecuador has won half of its games. This is a team that didn't make the World Cup 4 years ago and wasn't too close. And despite the fact that in the top 5 leagues in Europe, Ecuador's players have played a less well, at the time of this video, less than 90 minutes of total game time. Ecuador's got something going on with a team of no names. And when you say no names, that's operative. The leagues in South America are very good and can produce players that are good enough to bolster teams like Chile all the way to multiple Copa America titles and the knockout stage at the World Cup, with a majority South America-based side. The door might be opened further for a team like Ecuador when you consider the fact that a lot of major players are not allowed to travel to South America for some of these qualifiers due to COVID. Or a team like Uruguay that is more dependent on that European influx is going to be more impacted. They're currently in 4th, Colombia's in 5th, even though their national team is in somewhat of a shambles, according to my sources, which would be the Colombian contention of my Twitch chat. Paraguay and Chile are all within one match of being able to get into the qualifying as well, so nothing's really shaken out so far, other than the fact that Peru apparently plans on not going to the World Cup for another 20 plus years. They've landed firmly behind Bolivia and Venezuela after a third of qualifying. I will say this, Colombia seems to be a team in disarray. They're not calling up James recently for the Copa America. Things are a bit of a mess. Paraguay is trending in the opposite direction. I believe they might be able to flip it. Ecuador's the surprise package. Who knows how long they'll be able to hold on to that. But Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay seem the safe bets as long as they get enough of their players to play the qualifying. Colombia and Chile are in trouble as teams that are normally able to make it through this sort of thing. And Peru, who broke a very long cold streak of not making the World Cup, was looking to start another one. So even though they were one of the South American teams to make it out last time, I wouldn't count on it again. Which brings us to the one you've probably been waiting for. Oceania! I have terrible news for you. It's been rescheduled. They're looking in January 2022 to play a giant 2-group tournament, at which point if you finish in the top 2 of your group, you go to a semifinal and then a final. I will say one thing, Solomon Islands has a chance to grab the 0.5 qualifying spots out of Oceania. New Zealand is on a downturn, despite the fact that the 2010 World Cup, New Zealand was the only team that did not lose up the Kiwis. They're 122nd in the world right now, and honestly, they've been getting abused at youth level by a dude named Rafael Leí. At least that's, I think, how you say it. The dude's 17. He's been offered trials by major European clubs. He plays for the Solomon Islands senior national team, and he plays for the best team in the domestic league, Henderson Eels. He's under 18, so he can't really move. Now, his record for the Henderson Eels sounds like I'm making this dude up, but I promise you I'm not. I have Googled highlights of him. He has 67 goals in 32 games for the best team in a nation of 600,000 people in the domestic league. Seriously. Out of 600,000 people, the senior league, 67 goals in 32 games, and he's 17. He's 17 for another, 8 days. He turns 18 on September 9th. The point is, the Solomon Islands have a superstar who I would wager is actually better than everybody in a Kiwi shirt not named Chris Wood, which gives the Solomon Islands a shot to not only go to the continental playoff, but somehow house their way into a World Cup, which I, for one, am rooting for. And I'm a huge New Zealand fan. As you're telling me I see a team with a budding star and an actual chance to not only get there, but make a little bit of noise, I want to see what happens. But that brings us to Europe. European qualification has actually already gotten underway, and if you aren't familiar, in Europe you have to win your group. If you don't win your group, you go into second. As such, it'll actually be wrapping up at the end of November. I'm going to need you to hang with me though. If you don't win your group and you finish second, you go into a pool. And then the top 2 teams, okay, just the top 2 teams that won their Nations League group and didn't finish in the top 2 in the other groups, get a Hail Mary and get thrown into that same group. So if you don't finish in the top 2, you need to have won your Nations League group and hope that nobody else that won their Nations League group actually drops out of the top 2. So if you win a Nations League group A, you can basically just chill for all of qualifying. Not really, because if you end up in this pot of what is now 12 teams, you go into 3 playoff paths, basically 3 groups of 4. You play a semifinal and a final, and if you win that group of 4, you go to the World Cup. It's a meritocracy of the second place teams, which is nice. But the trick is you got to get in that top 2, or you got to get really lucky and play well in the Nations League. So in Group A, it looks like Portugal and Serbia are already set. Serbia missed out on the Euros on penalty shootout to Scotland, so you know they've got quality, and Ireland has lost their first 2 matches, basically removing themselves from the equation with 6 matches to go. Group B is a bit of a mess because of Greece and their particularly poor ranking at the moment. They're in a group with Spain and Sweden. Spain and Sweden have separated themselves early and look the very likely two teams to go through. The same can be said in Group C, where you have Italy and then Switzerland, where the Swiss will be hoping that they can surprise the European champions the same way they surprised all of us, even me, who was backing them to get to the round of 16 in the Euros. But I don't see Northern Ireland or Bulgaria as being able to capably threaten Switzerland, at least the way that things have gone so far. Those are two teams that are hanging around Nations League B level, but they just don't have the same cut in the qualifying. Switzerland's looking like a Nations League A team, and that makes all the difference. That's a mile gap. Group D, things get a little more spicy. We have France, who is got to think they should win this group outright. And then the Ukrainians, a team that I feel like a lot of people don't know what to think. They got to the quarterfinals of the Euros, but then they got shown that they really shouldn't be there. Finland obviously made the Euros and missed out by that much on getting to the knockout stages after beating Denmark in a game that could only be described as yikes. Glad you're okay, Christian. And then there's the tricky little bit about Bosnia and Herzegovina, who have made a World Cup before, in living memory, with most of those players still on their team. This is a tricky group. It's the sort of group where France could not qualify, but they've started well, so I'm not going to say that. I won't back myself into that corner. But, you know, you slip up on the road against Ukraine, you play a tough one against Bosnia, then Finland draws you 0-0 at your place. Things could get, like, it's possible. Like, things could get really interesting in this group. There are three teams that I think could take points off France. Most groups wouldn't have that. The French should roll, and I'm going to go Ukraine to finish second. Obviously, they're there right now. Then Belgium, Czech Republic, Wales, a Belarusian team that seems indomitable, and Estonia. Belgium's got to run away with this, or else they might be in danger of losing their #1 ranking in FIFA. In the Czech Republic, honestly, Patrick Schick became a national team star at the Euros. They should be able to handle Wales charging from behind, but the Welsh realize this is Gareth Bale's last chance in his prime, or anything resembling his prime, to make it to a World Cup. So get that man bun into the World Cup. I'm going to go ahead and say Wales actually end up passing up the Czech Republic to get into the World Cup, or at least into the playoff. Group F's got Denmark, Scotland, Israel, Austria. That is a veritable gauntlet. Israel's got Manor Solomon, who I think is just brilliant. If you've never had the chance to watch him play, you should. Austria gave the Euros everything. I think earned a lot of respect there. Scotland might not have, but they're also in second in the group right now and have not lost. And Denmark won its first 3 matches by 14 goals to 0. So things are early, but it's a real jambalaya soup for second place. I say Austria takes it. I loved the way they played at the Euros, and I think they can carry that form to grabbing a second position. Scotland and Israel will be in this conversation, though. Denmark will hope to keep this inserted distance, but if they get pulled back down to the fray, they could miss. I'm going Denmark and Austria. Turkey, Netherlands, Montenegro, Norway, Latvia, and Gibraltar. Norway has to do something eventually. You've got Martin Odegaard. You've got Erling Haaland. You've got, how do you say, Simon Kjær, right? Like, this is a team in Norway that has to do something. They have to. They missed the Euros. Those aren't coming around for another 4 years. You've got to make some noise, or else your world ranking's never going to get any better. We saw Turkey. Norway should be able to handle Turkey. It is tight. I don't think Montenegro holds the pace they're on right now. I think it is the Netherlands and it is Norway. But Turkey is going to make this spicy, and I think a 3-horse race down to the finish is going to be very fun in Group G. Because when it's a 3-horse race, one of those 3 teams is likely going to be eliminated from everything. And it could come down to like a point between first and third. And there's another group that could get incredibly spicy for that spot. Croatia, Russia, Slovakia, Cyprus, and Slovenia. Malta down there at the bottom. Slovenia has Josip Ilicic, who bags goals in Serie A. They also obviously have Jan Oblak in goal. Throw 9 sticks of wood around those guys, and you've got a team that can at least be competent. Slovakia made the Euros and didn't make a lot of noise, and the same can be said for Russia. Croatia's got to be the team you think wins this group, but honestly, are they going to be able to separate with their aging core? I don't know. This is completely open season for second place. I think Slovakia edges it. They've got this knack for doing those sorts of things, and Russia, I don't know, but they look terrible at the Euros. I'm not going to back them here. Sorry, Cyprus. In Group I, England's off to its winning start. Hungary is there. Albania and Poland might just be giving up on the Lewandowski era. We will see. I think England and Hungary take this. Oh, bold man saying it's the top 2, but look, Hungary's good. They were in the group of death and gave everybody a run, and they were missing their best player. Dominik Szoboszlai was not at the Euros. He will be at most of the matches that are going to happen in this qualifying. Albania hasn't shown any indication of being able to sustain this sort of output. They got their way into a Euros one time, but promptly flamed out in World Cup qualifying 2018. And for Poland, it's kind of now or never. And they just didn't look like they had it at the Euros, which is a really good indication of how people are going to be playing in qualifying. Finally, Group J, which is led by Armenia. Yes, that one. What we would have expected was Germany taking first and Romania and Iceland battling it out for second. What we've got is Armenia and North Macedonia at the top of the group right now. Do I have any idea what's going to happen? No. But if Armenia manages to qualify for the World Cup, I think that, based off the talent I know is on that team at this time, would be the most surprising World Cup qualification this side of Togo I've ever seen. North Macedonia played fun matches, competitive matches at the Euros, but they were far too open, and they are not going to be able to sustain this type of pace. But the Germans have to figure it out. They have to figure it out quickly. 70% of the group is still to be played, but Germany is right now not going to the World Cup. The Romanians are not a team of optimism, but they're a team that's capable of making the Euros, and they have a really high floor, so I think they could end up finishing ahead of Armenia and North Macedonia. And then there's Iceland, which is a team I refuse to count out under any circumstances because they play so well tactically that it just makes it, they double their value than this over the sum of their parts. They double it. This is the group I'm going to be watching like an absolute madman. I can't not pick Germany to finish first, but you know what? Screw it. I'm taking Armenia to finish second. They went out and beat Iceland. They went out and beat Romania. They are capable of beating these teams. That's how they ended up with the 9 points. I think Armenia finishes second and gets absolutely waxed by like Wales in the playoff. But a huge point of pride for the Armenians, you'd be there. But that's the rundown of the entire World Cup qualification. Every group, how it's going to happen, and what I think is going to happen with the key players that are going to be floating around in each of these groups. Who do you think is going to be in the World Cup 2022? Let me know down in the comments. I will see you on another video, and we'll be reviewing what's happening. After each set of match days, we'll go through the results and together. I look forward to it. I'll see you then.